All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Gavin, I just want to ask you a couple of questions about your illness. Okay, looking at your medical records, clearly you had a massive amount of tumor, right?
Yes.
And you had surgery on your spleen, a kidney, the tip of your pancreas, right?
I don't know about my pancreas, but they took out my kidney and my spleen.
All right, now, how long after your surgery did you learn you were in remission?
After my surgery, it wasn't, you're not in remission until you're done with your chemotherapy.
Okay, so when were you told your cancer is in remission?
June 2001.
Okay, and when was your surgery, if you know?
June 2000.
Okay, so 1 year after your surgery, were you told the cancer had disappeared?
Yes.
Okay.
June of 2001.
Okay, and in 2001, you did not go to Neverland, correct?
No.
In 2000 you made a number of trips to Neverland, right?
Yes.
So you started going to Neverland right after you had your surgery, right?
Not right after, because I had to recuperate from the surgeries.
Okay, how many months after your surgery do you think you started going to Neverland?
It was probably after the first round of, because I had to recuperate from the surgery and then I had to do my first round of chemotherapy.
Okay.
And so after my first round of chemotherapy, I believe I went to Neverland.
You can play sports now, correct?
Yes.
And what sports do you play?
I play football.
Okay, what position?
They have me at wide receiver, but they kind of realized that I was too big, and, to play wide receiver.
Okay.
So they put me on corner now.
Now, have you ever learned what kind of cancer it was?
They didn't, no one ever knew what kind of cancer it was. That's why I only believe that God gave me this cancer to guide my life in a certain way.
Right.
Because they sent it all over the country and no one could figure out what kind of cancer it was.
What I'm asking is this. How long after the surgery did you learn there was no cancer in your body at all? Was it 1 year?
It was, well, it's like they had a CAT scan after my 5th round of chemotherapy.
Right.
And then they said they couldn't see the cancer anymore, but they said they still had to finish the rest. I asked them, why can't I stop now then? Because, I didn't like taking chemotherapy, because it made me nauseous and a bunch of other stuff. But he said I had to finish the next 5, because it could be to where it's really, really small, to where you can't see it under a microscope. So they said I had to finish.
Okay, do you recall? Let me rephrase the question. Do you remember in 1996 making a false allegation that your mother abused you?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that. 403.
Sustained.
I asked you some questions about Evie Tavashi. And she was Michael Jackson's assistant, right?
Yes.
And did you talk to her often?
Yeah.
And?
Yes.
When did you begin talking to her?
I began talking to her once the first time I met Michael, I would call her sometimes and ask her about stuff. I would talk to her, and I would ask her if she knew where Michael was sometimes, or stuff like that.
Well, how many times do you think you telephoned Evie Tavashi?
I don't know. I don't know how many times I called her.
You called her quite often, didn't you?
I believe so.
And do you know when you began telephoning Evie?
When I first met Michael.
And did Michael give you her phone number?
I believe so.
Did Michael tell you you could call Evie when you wanted to?
Not really. I wasn't supposed to just call her for a lot of times. Or for just business, well, not really business, but, stuff like if I wanted to go to Neverland or something like that.
I can't hear what you're saying.
If I wanted to go to Neverland or something like that.
Okay, did you think she was your friend?
Yes.
Okay, did you think she was a friend of your family?
Yes.
And did you call her every week?
No, not really. We would call her sometimes, but I don't know if it was every week.
You mentioned that she had helped you set up an AOL account on the computer that Michael Jackson gave you, right?
Yes.
And approximately when did she set up that account, if you know?
After Michael had given me the computer. Michael told me that he wanted to get me internet for the computer, so he told me just That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about to call Evie. To call Evie and she would help me set it up.
When you called Evie to help set up that account, were you recovering from cancer?
No, I was in the middle of it. I just started.
Excuse me, I couldn't understand that.
I just started chemotherapy.
Okay, so you had just started chemotherapy when you first began talking to Evie.
Because the first time I went up to Neverland he gave me the computer, so that's when he told me that he wanted me to get internet. So when I came back, that's when I set it up, came back to my house. That's when I set up the internet.
So you came back to your house with a computer that Michael Jackson had given you, right?
Yes.
You called Evie to help set up an AOL account, right?
Yes.
You wanted an internet account, correct?
I thought it would be cool if I had one.
Okay, and Michael Jackson ended up paying for that, true?
Yes.
Okay, and you requested a screen account name, right?
Well, I didn't request it. Well, it's because I have the computer and they were telling me what to do. And I put my name in, I put the screen name I wanted in there.
Okay, you put the screen name you wanted in there.
Yeah, like when you have the CD and you're setting it up, like it tells you to do all the things, and...
Right.
There's a point where they have you put in what screen name you want.
Right.
And I put the screen name that I wanted in there.
Did you do this right after you returned home with the computer Michael Jackson had given you?
Probably not right after. Maybe a few days after.
Okay, and was this one of the first things you did when you got home?
No, because it was a few days after I got home.
Okay, so a few days after you returned from your first trip to Neverland, you tried to set up an AOL account on the computer that Mr. Jackson had given you, right?
Yes, I did set up an AOL account.
Was that the first computer you'd ever owned?
Yes.
Was it the first computer you'd ever used?
No, because no.
Explain. Let me rephrase that. When did you first learn to use a computer?
In the first grade.
Okay. Did you own a computer at any time before Mr. Jackson gave you the computer?
No.
Okay, but you knew how to use one, correct?
I wasn't like a cyber guy, but I knew how to generally use a computer.
You knew what an AOL account was, right?
Not really. They told me.
But you immediately started to set one up when you got home with the computer Mr. Jackson gave you, right?
Not when I got home. A few days later.
You called up Evie about setting up that account, right?
Yeah, because, yeah.
And you requested a screen account name of G-Blade 2000.
I'm going to object to that.
Sustained.
Do you remember the password? Excuse me, let me rephrase that. Do you remember the prosecutor asked you questions about passwords?
Yes.
And do you remember you talked about what passwords you wanted?
Not to the prosecutor.
Yeah. Did you say something about Hawk?
Oh, I told him that one of my screen names that I had was Whitehawk 344.
Please tell the jury what a screen name is.
It's on the internet. You have like a name that you go by, and that's the screen name.
Do you remember asking Mrs. Tavashi to change the password to sexy, SEXY?
Your Honor, I'm going to object again. This is in violation of the court's order.
Sustained. That is a violation. The jury's admonished to disregard that. You're instructed not to go into that.
Yes, Your Honor. Let me ask you questions about the alarm system. Do you recall the alarm system at Neverland?
I remember an alarm system that was up at, where you would, this one house where they put all this stuff in, like his awards and his gloves, and stuff like that.
When did you first learn about the alarm system at Neverland?
Well, he had passwords and stuff, so I'm pretty sure those were alarm systems.
And when did you first see an alarm system at Neverland?
I saw the code things, but I never really saw the alarm system.
Now, what code things are you talking about?
The code that you push so the doors would open.
And how did you learn about those codes?
We'd go into the main house. Michael gave me a code. I guess that's what I learned about it.
Do you remember the number of the code he gave you?
No.
Do you remember any of the code numbers at Neverland?
I remember the code to his room.
What was the code number to his room?
I'm pretty sure it was like 1960.
And approximately when did you learn that code number?
I didn't learn that until after I came back from Miami.
Had you ever learned any code number at Neverland before you got back from Miami?
Yes. When I was visiting the first time, they told me the code to the main house.
Who is they?
It was either Michael or the maids.
Did you ever ask anybody for the code at Neverland?
Yeah, I would ask Michael.
And did you ever ask anybody else?
Well, not really. I mean, I would ask the maids sometimes when I would forget the code and they would remind me. But when I would ask, like when I didn't know the code at all, and I would first ask, I would usually ask Michael.
Did you ever ask any security person any code number?
No.
Did you ever see your brother or sister ask any security person for any code number?
No.
Do you recall having the code to get into Michael's room?
Yes.
Do you recall having the code to get into any other room at Neverland?
No.
Never did.
No, I think those are the only two.
Do you recall ever going into any room at Neverland when Michael Jackson wasn't present, besides his bedroom?
I mean, there's a lot of rooms there. Maybe we'd go in the arcade and play video games. I don't know if that counts.
What rooms at Neverland have you been into when Michael Jackson was not present?
The theater, the main house, my unit, the train house, the train station. I guess that's it.
Are they the only rooms you ever went into when Michael Jackson wasn't present?
Oh, maybe the library, too.
Did you ever go into his children's bedrooms, Prince and Paris?
Yeah, well, when Michael wasn't, I wouldn't go in there because I would go in there to visit Prince and Paris, but, I never went in there when they weren't there.
Did you ever go into Prince's room when Michael Jackson wasn't at Neverland?
I don't think I did.
Are you sure?
Not really, because I might have walked through there or something, because, when you walk up some stairs, there's, like all the rooms are connected between all the doors.
Did you ever go into Paris's room at Neverland when Michael Jackson was not present?
I don't think I did. Because their room is because you could walk through the doll room and just go right to the upstairs. So, their room wouldn't really be a room that you can really walk through. So, I don't think I ever went into that when they weren't there.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Is Prince's room near Paris's room?
No, I don't think so. I think they're both doors are in two different corners of the whole upstairs thing.
Have you been in every room in the main house?
I believe so.
And why do you believe so?
Because I was there a long time, when Paris was there, or when Prince and Paris were there, and, I was there one time when they were getting ready to go to bed. I would walk through the doll room, and then I would go up to where the train thing was, and then they were having their class one time that Grace was teaching them. And then I went up there, and I think I was teaching Prince something. I was helping Grace, and...
Were you helping Grace teach?
Yes.
The children?
Yes.
Where were you helping Grace teach?
I don't know. It was probably, I don't even think I was really helping them. I think I was helping them with a puzzle or something.
With a puzzle?
Yeah.
You said you were helping with homework or something along those lines, right?
Well, I was helping with their schooling.
With their schoolwork?
With their schooling.
Please tell the jury what help you were giving Grace as far as the children's schooling is concerned.
It wasn't really, teaching, you wouldn't say, this and this equals this, or whatever. I was just like Prince might have been doing a drawing, and I was talking to him about it, and I was saying, well, it's really nice, or they might have been doing a puzzle, and I would be helping them do it or something like that.
Did you do that more than once?
I think I only did that once.
Okay, and did you ask Grace if you could help out before you did that?
Yes.
And she said, yes.
Yes.
Okay, how long was that session?
Well, I think their school is only 3 hours. But, I think I was only in there for, 30 minutes to an hour.
Okay, and was it your understanding that Michael Jackson's children do their schooling at Neverland?
I thought that I thought Grace would teach them, and then Grace would go wherever they go, so I guess it would be anywhere.
And was this teaching going on in one of the children's bedrooms?
No.
Where was it going on?
It was upstairs, like in the little playroom place.
Well, there's a room upstairs which has school materials, right?
Yes.
And what school materials have you seen in that room?
I saw this little tiny chalkboard, and then like these big floor piece puzzles, and I don't really remember.
But you've seen schoolbooks in there, correct?
No, I don't think so.
Well, that's where the children do their schooling, as far as you know, right?
No, I said that I think whenever Grace wants to teach them, that's where they do their schoolwork.
Okay, but you've seen blackboards, you've seen school materials, correct?
I said I saw a little kid blackboard, but I don't even think Grace was using it.
Okay, but the room you're talking about is not one of the children's bedrooms, correct?
No.
Okay, now, was that the first time you'd been in that room?
No.
When was the first time you went through that room?
I mean, because the room wasn't really a classroom. I mean, per se. They would use it as a classroom. There would be stuff there. There would be, to use as a classroom. There was like this video game thing there. I think it was in that room. And I think it might have been in the same room as the big train thing.
Was it your understanding that Michael's children are tutored in the main house?
My understanding was that they are tutored, but I don't know where.
Okay, but you don't think it's in that particular room you just described?
It probably was. I mean, I'm saying wherever Grace wanted it, they could have it, because it's not like she had a set classroom. It's not like they're going to New York and they're going to come back to Neverland to do their their schooling.
Do you remember approximately when you helped Grace tutor the children?
Probably after I came back from Miami.
Okay, wasn't before then?
No.
Okay, did you see the children tutored the first time you went to Neverland?
No, that was the only time I ever saw them, really.
Now, is it true that you introduced Chris Tucker to Michael Jackson?
Yes.
And approximately when was that?
Well, I think it was either I gave Chris Michael's phone number or, well, I think I gave Michael Chris's phone number, and then I called Chris after a while and I asked him if Michael called him yet, and then he said that he hadn't. And so then I just gave him one of Michael's phone numbers, or I gave him Evie's phone number, I'm not sure, just so he could do it himself, he can call Michael.
Do you recall ever being in Michael Jackson's bedroom and hearing the alarm go off?
The little dee-doo thing.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, approximately when was that?
I don't know, after Miami. I mean, but it's because, when you're up in his bedroom, like you can hear it, but it's not as good as if you're downstairs, but you can still kind of hear it.
Okay, when you were initially interviewed by the sheriffs, you were asked about what happened after the Bashir documentary was on television, right?
Yes.
Now, when did you first hear about the Bashir documentary that appeared on television?
On the news and from Michael.
Were you watching the news at home when you first heard about it?
I didn't really know that it was the Bashir documentary per se. But I knew that they were talking about kids sleeping in his room or whatever.
Well, you mentioned to the sheriffs about people coming to your house and bothering you, right?
Yes, I think so.
And when did that first start?
I think after we came back from Neverland.
Okay, you say after you came back from Neverland. When was that?
I don't know, I'm not sure.
Well, when you told the sheriffs that people were coming to your house and bothering you, what were you referring to?
Well, one time we caught one of Michael's security guys that we thought he was trying to stand behind a car, and then my stepdad went out and asked him what he was doing, and then we saw him run, and...
Well, your mother had asked for security because she said your family was being hassled, didn't she?
I don't know if she asked him or, who are you saying that she asked?
You never heard your mother say she wanted some security because your family was being hassled.
No, I knew that she didn't like it, but, I don't know if she asked for security.
Okay. We talked last week briefly about all the conversations you had with Michael Jackson at the hospital, right?
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
You had initially testified that there was just one call, correct?
Well, it's I'm probably sure I called him more than once, but, The one I'm for sure of is the first time he called me to go up to Neverland for the first time.
You told the sheriffs there were times when you would speak to Mr. Jackson on the phone for hours, right?
Yes.
And what did you used to talk about, if you remember?
We would talk about, like, video games or people I knew, and people he knew, or a CD he might be trying to do, or a song or something, or his life, or my cancer, or Simpsons and Disney cartoons.
And you had a lot of those discussions in the hospital, right?
Yes.
And you had discussions after you got out of the hospital, right?
We would have discussions, yes. Yes.
And you would have discussions after you got out of the hospital at home, right?
They were. A majority of them, if not all of them, were, well, the majority of them were at my grandmother's house.
Okay, and would you call Mr. Jackson?
Sometimes I would call him, and he would call me sometimes.
Okay, and these conversations would last sometimes a couple hours, right?
Yes.
And you said you would talk about cancer. You would talk about The Simpsons. You would talk about video games, right?
Yes.
Do you remember anything else you talked about?
That's pretty much it right there.
Do you recall your first trip to Neverland?
Yes.
And how did you get there?
They had us pack all our bags, and then a limousine came in the front of my grandmother's house. And we were all surprised because we didn't think we were going to go up in a limousine. Well, I didn't think I was going to go up in a limousine. I didn't know that we were. And I was really happy, because that was the first time I'd ever been in a limousine. And we threw all our bags in there and then we went up to Neverland.
Who told you you were going to be picked up to go to Neverland?
Well, I believe my parents set it up. But I don't know who really told me. I knew what day and I knew Michael wanted me to go up, but, I mean, I didn't really know, like, all the logistical stuff.
When you were responding to Prosecutor Snedden's questions, do you remember discussing Jay Leno?
Yes.
Now, isn't it true that in none of your interviews with the sheriffs and never when you testified before the grand jury on 2 occasions did you ever mention Jay Leno, correct?
Yes. Because I thought he didn't have anything to do with this case.
Did Prosecutor Snedden tell you at some point that Mr. Leno had something to do with the case?
Yes. Well, he asked me about what I know about Jay Leno and how I came about to have him in my, well, not really have him, but, I mean, how I don't know how to say it. Like, he pretty much just asked me what I know about Jay Leno.
Did Prosecutor Snedden tell you that I had mentioned Jay Leno in this courtroom?
No.
Did he tell you how the name Jay Leno had come up in the case?
No.
When did Prosecutor Snedden first mention the name Jay Leno to you?
Well, actually, it wasn't really, Mr. Snedden was there, but I believe it was. I don't remember who exactly asked me, but I remember him being there, and I remember Mr. Snedden shaking his head, but I don't think it was Mr. Snedden that actually asked me.
Do you know approximately when this meeting took place?
Before maybe a day or two before I first came to testify here.
So it was after this trial had started, right?
Yes.
Okay, and did Mr. Snedden call you on the phone to discuss this?
No, I met with him.
Okay, did someone ask you to come meet with Mr. Snedden?
Yes.
Who was that?
I don't remember. I remember they told me that I was going to, but I don't remember who exactly.
Do you remember where the meeting took place?
In a house.
Okay. Did Mr. Snedden ask you to testify that Jay Leno was your favorite comedian?
No.
Okay. When did the idea that Jay Leno was your favorite comedian come up in this case?
Well, Jay Leno was my favorite comedian, but I don't really understand what.
Do you remember calling Jay Leno on the telephone?
I remember calling, yeah, I remember calling his phone.
Do you remember speaking with Jay Leno on the telephone?
No, I never spoke with Jay Leno.
At any time?
No.
Did you ever try to reach Jay Leno on the telephone?
Yes.
And who did you call, if you know?
I called a phone number that I was given.
Where did you get the phone number?
It was either Jamie Masada or Louise Palanker.
Did you dial the number?
Yes.
Was your mother with you?
No.
Was anybody in the background?
Well, when I called him, I'm pretty sure that I was in the hospital, so either it could have been my dad, or maybe a nurse that would come in to do my vital signs or something.
And you dialed the number, right?
Yes.
And do you have any idea who answered the phone?
Answering machine.
And did you ever actually get Mr. Leno on the phone?
No.
So you deny you've ever spoken to him on the phone, right?
I've never spoken to Jay Leno.
Okay. You never mentioned Mr. Leno to psychologist Stanley Katz, right?
No, I don't think so.
And you never mentioned Mr. Leno to Lieutenant Klapakis during any interview, correct?
No, I've never mentioned Jay Leno to anybody. Except for when they ask me what I know about Jay Leno.
To your knowledge, did anybody in your family contact, or try to contact, Mr. Leno while you were ill?
No, because I was the only one with the phone number.
Did you ever give it to your mother?
No.
Ever give it to your father?
No.
Ever give it to Star?
No.
Ever give it to your sister Devellin?
Her name is Devellin, but, no, I never gave it to her.
Okay. You left a message on his machine, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever get a call back from anyone claiming they represented Mr. Leno?
No.
Alright, so what you're saying is if anybody spoke to Mr. Leno and said they were you, it was certainly a false statement, right?
Object as argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustained.
I never spoke to.
Just a moment. Next question.
Has Prosecutor Snedden ever discussed with you his conversation with Mr. Leno?
Your Honor, object. Assumes facts not in evidence.
Sustained. Assumes facts not in evidence.
I'll rephrase it, Your Honor. Has Prosecutor Snedden ever told you that he had a conversation with Jay Leno about this case?
No.
Has Prosecutor Snedden ever told you that any Santa Barbara sheriff had a conversation with Jay Leno about this case?
No.
Never told you that at all?
No.
Okay. Did you hear the alarm in Michael Jackson's bedroom more than once?
The little, dee-doo, sound.
The alarm.
Yeah. Like when Frank would come in or something, you could hear it.
You could hear the alarm go off?
Yeah.
How many ringing sounds would you hear?
It would go like 3 times, dee-doo, like 3 times. And that's how many ringing sounds it was.
Have you ever discussed that alarm system with your brother Star?
Probably. I don't know.
Did you talk to your brother Star about what he said about the alarm system in this courtroom?
No.
Have you discussed with your brother Star anything you said in this courtroom?
No.
How many times do you think you entered Michael Jackson's bedroom when Mr. Jackson wasn't there?
I never went inside his room when he wasn't there.
To your knowledge, did your brother ever go into his room when he wasn't there?
I don't think my brother went into his room when he wasn't there.
Okay, so you have no knowledge of him doing that, correct?
No.
Okay, Prosecutor Snedden asked you questions about your father abusing you and your mother, right?
I believe so.
You always refer to David as your biological father, correct?
Yes.
Did someone ask you to use that term?
No.
How did you start calling him, my biological father?
Because I accepted my now father Jay Jackson as my real father, because he's more of a father than my real father ever was.
Okay, you testified that Michael Jackson and Frank showed you a computer and went to websites with naked women, right?
Yes.
And approximately when was that?
That was like on the first night that we were inside his room that we were going to go to sleep.
And you said it was like an Apple computer, is that right?
I'm not sure, because I don't remember. I think it was Frank's computer because it wouldn't be mine, because I didn't set up the AOL account until, after I came back, so it was probably Frank's computer.
Was your computer an Apple computer?
Yes.
Okay, you told the sheriffs that it was either your computer or Frank's computer during one of your interviews, right?
Yes, sir.
Was Frank's computer an Apple computer?
I think it was probably a Sony computer.
And you told the sheriffs that Frank started looking at girls on those sites, right?
He started, typing up stuff, yes.
Pardon me.
Yes.
And did he ask you to join in?
No, well, he was. He had it on his bed and he set it up, and there were, Frank was typing in stuff and looking. And me, Michael and my brother were there.
Is that when you say that Michael Jackson looked at a naked girl on the computer and said, "Got milk"?
Yes.
Okay. Now, to your knowledge, did Michael Jackson or Frank ever show you a website on a computer like that at any other time?
I don't think so.
Was that the only time?
I believe so.
Okay. And Frank's the one who initially was pressing the buttons to look up the site, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You also testified that at some point Michael Jackson showed you some girly magazines, right?
Yes.
And I believe you mentioned Hustler and Playboy to the sheriffs, right?
Yes.
Okay. You also testified that at some point Michael Jackson pretended that he was having sex with a female mannequin, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you also told the jury that at some point Michael Jackson mentioned the word clitoris, or clitoris, right?
I don't think I did.
Did you testify to that?
Shakes head from side to side.
Ever tell the sheriffs that?
No.
Okay. And your testimony to the jury is that after Michael Jackson showed you women on websites, after he showed you Hustler and Playboy, which are girly magazines, and after he pretended to have sex with a female mannequin, he then at some point masturbated you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that what you told the sheriffs?
Yes, I told the sheriffs about that.
Now, at some point, you went to the Hilton Hotel to visit Michael Jackson, right?
Yes.
And approximately when was that?
I was in my second round of chemotherapy.
And you were with your father, right?
Yes.
And you say that was around the time of your second round of chemotherapy.
Yes.
And who invited you to the Hilton Hotel?
It was either I called Michael or Michael called me, and I asked him where he was. And then he told me that he was in, more like near, around LA, and then I asked him, I asked him if I could visit him.
Okay.
And then he said it was okay. And so I went up there and visited him for like 2 hours.
And how long were you there?
2 hours.
Okay. With your dad, right?
My dad was in another room. And then with me and Michael, we were in his bedroom with Prince and Paris, and we were watching Aaron Carter's music videos.
And Prince and Paris were there the whole time, right?
Yes.
How did you get to the Hilton?
My dad drove me there.
And he drove you in an SUV that Michael Jackson had given your family, correct?
Yes.
Do you know when Michael Jackson gave your family that SUV?
I think it was like right after my second round of chemotherapy. Gary came in. I think he was going to drive me up from Neverland right after my second round. And then once I went in, he drove me up in the truck, and then I walked up to the truck, and I was like, "Is this Michael's truck?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I said, "Wow, my grandfather has one that looks exactly like this one." And Gary was like, "Well, this one's yours now."
That was Gary Hearn.
Yes.
Okay. And just, Gary Hearn was an employee of Mr. Jackson's, correct?
Yes.
And you're telling the jury that Gary Hearn told you that your family owned the SUV, right?
He told me that Michael gave it to us.
Okay. And did he leave it at your house, to your knowledge?
No, we were coming. It was in the garage of the hospital, and I went in there, and there's like a little bow in the center console between the two seats and stuff.
You complained to the sheriffs that someone had taken that truck back, right?
Yes. I said I believe so.
You complained to the sheriffs that your family thought it was their truck, and at some point someone representing Mr. Jackson took the truck back and never returned it to you, right?
I think it was that we had the truck and somebody crashed into it or something. And then we had asked Michael if they can fix it and give it back to us. And then we gave it, they had it, they got the truck so that they can fix it and give it back to us, and they never gave it back to us.
Who crashed the truck?
I don't think it was someone. I think someone crashed into it.
Do you know who was driving it at the time?
I think it might have been parked. I'm not sure. I don't really know how it happened exactly.
It might have been who?
It might have been parked while it went, and someone, ran into it or something, because I don't really remember how exactly.
Yes, but somebody ran into it while your family had possession of it, right?
Yes, well, we owned it.
When you owned it, right?
Yes.
And at some point, Someone in your family asked if Mr. Jackson would pay to repair it, correct?
I'm pretty sure.
Pardon me.
I'm pretty sure.
Alright, let me just make sure I understand. You're pretty sure that someone in your family asked if Mr. Jackson would pay to repair the SUV that you claimed he gave your family, right?
Yeah, because, it had to have been like that, because the guy came to fix it.
And you did complain to the sheriffs that the truck was never returned to your family, correct?
Yes.
Because you believed that your family owned the truck at that point, right?
Because Gary said that Michael said he gave it to me. And then I called Michael later to thank him, and he said, yeah, it's your truck now.
Okay, people in your family. Well, I shouldn't say that. You were personally upset about that, right?
Excuse me, vague as to what that is.
I'll rephrase it. You were upset that your family never got that truck back, correct?
I was more sad because then we didn't have a vehicle to use to go anywhere.
Okay, do you recall ever asking Chris Tucker for a vehicle?
No.
Do you know of any member of your family ever doing that?
No.
Okay, never heard of anything like that.
I remember Chris was going to give us a vehicle.
And what happened?
It never was able to. Someone lost the key and something like that, and that was the only key, and then I think all this stuff started.
So you never got a vehicle from Chris Tucker, right?
No.
Were you upset about that?
Well, I was kind of sad, but it's like he was going to give it up. That would be nice, so I don't really have that much of a right to be angry.
Okay, now, you complained to the Santa Barbara sheriffs that, after I was done with my cancer stuff, you never saw Michael again, right?
No, not until the Martin Bashir thing.
Okay, and you wanted to see him after you were in remission, correct?
Yes.
You wanted to visit Neverland after you were in remission, right?
Yes.
And you felt in some way that Michael had cut off the friendship, right?
Yes.
You felt he had abandoned you, right?
Yes.
And you felt he had abandoned your family, right?
Yes.
Now, at some point you told the sheriffs that Michael had given your family a Bronco, correct?
I'm pretty sure that the GMC was called Bronco.
Are you sure about that?
I'm not exactly sure what kind of truck it was.
You also complained to the Santa Barbara sheriffs that your computer had gotten messed up, right?
I think I did. The battery stopped working. The computer just wouldn't turn on. It would always stay black.
This was the computer that Michael Jackson had given you, right?
Yes.
And at some point you asked to have Michael Jackson fix the computer, right?
Well, I told my mom about it. And then my mom said, well, we could probably call Evie and they can help us fix it. And then I called Evie and asked her if they can fix it for me. And Evie said yes. And then so we mailed it to her or dropped it off or something like that, and then I never got it back.
Well, actually, your mother asked Evie if Michael Jackson would fix the computer, right?
I don't know who exactly asked.
Well, you told the sheriffs that your mother had asked, didn't you?
I don't know.
Would it refresh your recollection if I just show you a page of the transcript of your interview?
Yes.
Okay, may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Have you had a chance to look at that page?
Yes.
Of your police interview, does it refresh your recollection about what you told Santa Barbara sheriffs?
A little bit.
You told him that your mother asked to have the computer repaired, right?
Yes. But as I told you, I'm not, as of right now. That interview took place a while ago. I'm not sure who exactly called. But in the transcript it says that, so that's probably what happened.
Okay, is it your belief that your mother called Evie?
I believe so.
Your mother used to call Evie a fair amount, didn't she?
I don't know.
Did you ever see your mother call Evie?
Maybe once or twice.
No.
Maybe. I'm pretty sure I saw her call for the computer, because I asked her. And I'm not sure exactly how many times she called Evie.
And you complained to the Santa Barbara sheriffs that you never got the computer back, right?
Yeah, I told them that I didn't get the computer back.
Did you use to communicate with Evie by email?
I don't know. I don't think I did.
Okay, are you sure about that?
No.
Okay, did you know how to use email at that point?
A little bit. I mean, it was kind of hard. Well, it wasn't really hard. I just didn't really understand it at first, and then I got the hang of it, but.
You indicated at the Hilton you watched music videos with Mr. Jackson, right?
Yes.
And do you know why Mr. Jackson was at the Hilton?
I think he was doing some recording thing. Well, yeah, he told me that he was going to do some recording in Los Angeles, or something like that.
And at some point you complained to the sheriffs that Mr. Jackson had changed his phone numbers after you visited the Hilton, right?
Well, that was the only phone number I left, or I called, well, I'm not sure. Because the only phone number that never changed was Evie's phone number. And I would call her and I would ask her sometimes where Michael was or something. And I had the phone number to his hotel, so I think I called him at his hotel and asked him if I could go visit him. I think it was around, I'm not sure when exactly.
When did you first get upset about your phone numbers for Michael Jackson not working?
Maybe around the third or fourth chemotherapy round I called his numbers and it would be, like, this phone number is no longer in service. Or sometimes it would just ring and it wouldn't no one would ever pick up or something like that.
This was after your cancer was in remission.
No, this was around the third or fourth cancer round of chemotherapy.
Suddenly his phone numbers didn't work, right?
Yes.
And did you try to get a hold of phone numbers that would work?
I don't know.
Well, you've indicated that you were upset that the phone numbers you had for Mr. Jackson at some point didn't work, right?
Yes.
And the phone numbers you had for Mr. Jackson began to not work after it appeared that your cancer was in remission, correct?
No, I said they stopped working after my third or fourth chemotherapy round.
Okay, before that, could you easily call him?
Yes.
And before that, did you often call him?
Yes, and he would call me and stuff. We would talk. We talked a lot more before then.
In fact, you called him at the Hilton Universal the day you visited, right?
I believe so. I'm not too sure how it came about.
Who did you complain to about your phone numbers to Mr. Jackson not working?
I didn't complain to anybody.
Ever mention it to your mother?
I'm pretty sure I did.
Ever mention it to your brother and sister?
I'm pretty sure I did. Well, the first person I told was my biological father, and then, because he was usually the one always with me, like when we would go up to Neverland or go with me with Chris or something.
So you complained to your biological father David that around the time of your third chemotherapy treatment the phone numbers you had for Michael Jackson were not working, right?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the question, the use of the first part of it, because I believe that's not his testimony, so it assumes facts not in evidence.
Overruled. You may answer. Do you want the question read back?
Yes. Record read. I didn't really complain. I mean, I was in the hospital, and I was either in the hospital or at my grandmother's house or something. And I told my dad that, I told my biological father that they weren't working anymore.
Well, when you first started talking to Michael Jackson in the hospital, you talked to him about your cancer, right?
Yes.
And he used to talk to you about ways to deal with it, right?
Sometimes he would, yes.
And he tried to encourage you to believe in yourself and you could heal, correct?
Yes. He would tell me that like this one time he told me to eat up cancer cells like a Pac-Man. Something like that.
And what he told you was to sort of visualize in your mind Pac-Man eating up bad cancer cells, right?
Yes.
Did you do that?
Not really.
Did you ever try to visualize?
Well, yeah, I think I did once, but I mean.
Now, when you had your third chemotherapy treatment, you were getting encouraging signs from the doctor, right, about beating cancer.
Yes.
And you were being told that it looked like you might beat this thing, right?
I didn't really get told that until my fifth chemotherapy round where they had that CT scan.
But didn't you complain to the Santa Barbara sheriffs that after your cancer was over, Michael stopped communicating with you?
It wasn't after my cancer. It was toward the beginning of my third chemotherapy round.
You told them, after I was done with my cancer stuff, you couldn't call Michael anymore, right?
I couldn't call Michael either at that period, or the period when I had cancer.
Okay, When you were undergoing chemotherapy, you visited Neverland with Chris Tucker on a couple of occasions, correct?
I don't know if it was during my cancer. I think it was. I visited him after. I don't know.
Approximately when was that, if you know?
I went up there with his birthday for Dustin, so whenever his birthday is.
I'm sorry. I can't hear you.
I went up there whenever his birthday was, whenever Dustin's birthday was. But I don't know what came first, either the Martin Bashir thing or Dustin's birthday. I'm not sure.
And Michael Jackson wasn't there, right?
No.
Do you know how that trip got arranged?
Which trip?
The trip with Chris Tucker to Neverland when Michael Jackson wasn't even there.
Well, I'm not sure if if it was Dustin's birthday or Chris's, the Martin Bashir thing. So I don't know how it got arranged that we'd go up there. I don't really know whether it was like a limousine or something.
But you don't know who set that up, right?
Not exactly. Well, I think the Martin Bashir thing I went up there with Chris. And then with the Dustin thing, I went up there in Chris's bus with a bunch of other people, his family and stuff.
Are you telling the jury that when you did the Martin Bashir filming, Chris Tucker was with you?
I don't know whether he drove me up there or not. Because I'm not too sure how, all this stuff, how I got up there. But I know I went up there with Chris for Dustin's birthday.
Do you remember Chris being there when you were filmed for the Bashir documentary?
I don't know, because I think I might have went up there with Chris, because I remember going up there with Chris one time when we were riding horses, and then he was wearing this thing that only sheikhs would wear, and he was joking around, and we were all riding horses and stuff. And I don't know, I think it might have been around the time that the Martin Bashir thing got filmed.
To your knowledge, Chris Tucker wasn't in the Bashir documentary, right?
No.
Did you leave Neverland after that visit with Chris?
Excuse me, I'm going to object as vague as to that visit. We've discussed a couple of them.
I'll rephrase it.
All right.
When you were at Neverland to film what became part of the Bashir documentary, at some point you went home, right?
Yes.
And did you go home with Chris Tucker?
No. We stood there and we went swimming and stuff.
What was the state of your cancer when you filmed what became part of the Bashir documentary?
The Martin Bashir interview thing.
Yes.
I was in remission.
And for how long had you been in remission at that point?
I'm not sure when it was filmed, so I'm not sure how long.
Do you know if it was a number of months?
Yeah, definitely.
At that point, could you reach Michael Jackson by telephone if you wanted to?
No, after the Martin Bashir thing, he didn't give me any phone numbers, because he left, either the same day or the day after the Martin Bashir interview, and I didn't really get any other phone numbers.
But your phone numbers for Michael Jackson stopped working before the Bashir documentary, didn't they?
Yes. Michael called me to go up to Neverland. He said that he was trying to find me or something like that to go, for him to talk to me, and then he wanted me to go up to the Martin Bashir. Well, he didn't tell me that. He told me he wanted me to go up to his ranch and visit him.
You hadn't been able to call Michael Jackson by phone for many months before you were filmed in the Bashir documentary, right?
No, I was not able. I didn't have a phone number.
Okay. Now, in the year 2001, you don't recall ever going to Neverland, right?
No.
You started going in the year 2000, right?
Yes.
You didn't go there in the year 2001, right?
I don't think I did.
And at some point you heard from Michael Jackson and went there for the Bashir filming, right?
Yes.
Now, you visited Neverland a number of times in the year 2000 with your biological father, correct?
Yes.
And do you remember if Michael Jackson was there during those visits?
I think he was there once. The first time I went there he was there. And then I think the second time I went there, he was there and then he had to leave.
When your father was at Neverland with you, did you ever stay in Michael Jackson's room?
No, I only stood on the first night, and then the rest of the nights I just stood in, the units and stuff.
And when you say you stayed there the first night, is that the night you described where Michael Jackson and Frank slept on the floor, and you and your brother slept on the bed? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I believe so.
And is it your testimony that that first visit, you had dinner in the main house with your family and Michael Jackson?
Yes.
And during that dinner, was there a discussion about whether or not you and Star could sleep in Michael Jackson's room?
The first day.
Yes.
Yeah, like, we were in Michael's office and then we were talking about stuff, and then Michael told me to ask if I could go sleep in his room so we can watch, like, movies and stuff.
Was there a discussion at the dinner table that evening with your parents and Michael Jackson about whether or not you could stay in his room?
Yes. Michael told me to ask my parents in front of him and my parents.
Did you ask your parents in front of Mr. Jackson at the dinner table that evening?
Yes.
Did your parents both approve you and your brother staying in Michael Jackson's room?
Yes.
And that's the night you say Michael and Frank slept on the floor, right?
Yes.
Did you ever ask either of your parents after that whether you could stay in Michael Jackson's room?
I don't think so.
You don't think you ever asked them that question again?
I think it was like we only stood there that one night, and then after that, we stood in our units or something. Because I think that's the only night I slept in his room, the first night.
Okay, you said after that, you had stayed in the guest units.
Yes.
And are the guest units where your mother was staying?
Well, there's a lot of guest units, so I think me and my brother had a room. Me and my brother and my sister had a room, and my mom and my dad had another room.
Okay, and you and your brother would stay in those guest units, right?
Yes.
And approximately how many of those trips to Neverland do you think you and your brother stayed in the guest units?
After that first night we would stay in there every night. We would go there, every time, or sometimes we would go to the train house and sleep up there.
You'd sleep in the train house?
Yeah.
Please tell the jury where the train house is.
It's on top of like the guest units are right here, and you go up the side of this hill, and then up there's like this train station. And then you can sleep in there, because there's, like, couches, and you can roll out a bed, and then there's a TV there and stuff. It was pretty cool.
How many times do you think you and your brother stayed in the train house?
A few nights, I guess.
When you visited Neverland with Chris Tucker, did you stay in the train house?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the time that we stood in the train house.
Do you know where Chris Tucker stayed when you visited Neverland with Chris Tucker?
No.
Did you ever go into his room?
I think we might have. I don't know. I mean, I don't know where he stood right as of now. I mean, I don't remember, but I think we went into his room to, like, say, let's go do this, or something like that.
Let me ask you this. After the first night your family was at Neverland, when do you next remember your mother visiting Neverland?
Not until after we came back from Miami.
So you don't think your mother ever visited Neverland between your first visit in the year 2000 and right after the Miami trip?
Yes, I don't think she did.
Okay, you don't recall her being there at all?
No.
Okay, and you recall your father being there once or twice?
No, I recall my father being there every time I went up there.
And how many times was that?
When I had cancer, he went up there every time that I had cancer. And I'm not sure how many times I stood there. That was, because I think I stopped going out there after my 4th chemotherapy round. And so probably we went there, like, 4 or 5 times, or something like that, yeah.
At some point you learned about the Bashir documentary by watching television, right?
Well, I didn't really know it was the Bashir documentary until we started talking about it more with Chris, and stuff like that. And I just remember watching the news and they were talking about kids and Michael, but I didn't really know they were talking about the Martin Bashir documentary.
Well, you were watching CNN, correct?
I think I was. I don't know.
And at some point you saw a reference to yourself being in the Bashir documentary, right? Is that true?
I didn't know it was the Bashir documentary, but they said, I personally thought it was some guy that was saying stuff about Michael. And they were talking, I thought they mentioned my name when they were talking about Michael. But I didn't know it was the Martin Bashir documentary until, like, we started talking to Chris and stuff.
But you told the Santa Barbara sheriffs your name was mentioned a lot, correct?
No, I think I only told them my name was mentioned maybe, I don't think, a lot. But, I mean, I did think my name was mentioned.
You told the sheriffs, because on, like, CNN and stuff, they started saying, like, Gavin this and Gavin that, right?
I don't remember. I mean, I guess I did, because it's in the transcript.
Were they really mentioning your name on the newscasts?
Yes.
How many times did you hear your name mentioned on the newscasts?
3 or 4 times. I don't know.
Were you watching that with your mom?
Yes. Our whole family was watching it.
And generally speaking, would you say your family was upset?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall your mother ever calling up Michael Jackson to talk about it?
No. I remember Michael calling us.
Do you recall your mother ever discussing the fact that you had legal rights regarding that show?
No. I mean, the Martin Bashir thing.
Yes.
No.
Do you recall your mother ever discussing her claim that she never gave permission for you to be on a show?
Oh, yes. I remember that.
Okay. And when is the first time you heard your mother complain about her not giving proper permission for you to be on the show?
I don't remember.
Do you recall ever going to a lawyer with your mother to discuss your legal rights in that regard?
I'm not sure.
Do you remember discussing that with attorney Bill Dickerman?
Oh, yeah. We went to the Laugh Factory and we talked to Bill. My mom was talking to him. I mean, I was, like, playing around or something. I was, like, with the microphone.
And the discussion concerned, among other things, the fact that you had legal rights in that documentary, right?
I guess. I mean, I wasn't really paying attention. I was kind of bored.
Okay. Do you remember the rebuttal video?
Yes.
Do you remember you went to Hamid's home to film the rebuttal video?
Yes.
Do you remember discussions before you filmed that video about whether or not your mother was going to sign a release?
Not too sure.
Do you remember anything like that?
No.
You claim that Michael Jackson called you on the phone and said there's going to be a press conference in Florida, right?
Yes.
Did you want to be in a press conference?
Yeah, I wanted to, like, say that Michael was a good guy and stuff.
And you were disappointed when you got to Florida and no press conference took place, right?
I guess. But, I mean, I was still kind of having fun, so it wasn't that big of a deal to me.
I couldn't hear what you said.
I was still having fun, so it wasn't really that big of a deal to me.
Well, you thought that you were going to Florida to appear in a press conference with Michael Jackson, correct?
Yes.
You flew on Chris Tucker's plane to Florida, right?
Yes.
You stayed at a luxury hotel, right?
Yes.
You came back a couple of days later, right?
We went right to Neverland after we came back.
And there never was a press conference that you appeared at in Florida, right?
No.
And that upset you, didn't it?
As I said, not really. Because it wasn't, I mean, I thought we were. I mean, and then he said that we're not going to. Well, he didn't really say that we're not going to. I mean, it never really happened, so it's like, I was like, okay, whatever. I mean, and I was still having fun playing around and stuff, playing video games and stuff.
When you were in Miami, you stayed with your mom in a room, right?
Yes.
That was at the Turnberry Hotel, right?
Yes.
That was a floor below Michael Jackson's suite, true?
I don't know.
It wasn't a floor below.
I said that I don't know.
Do you remember your mother ever complaining that she wanted to be in Michael Jackson's suite?
No.
Never heard anything like that.
No.
And you say you never stayed overnight in Mr. Jackson's room at the Turnberry in Miami, right?
No, I never stood in his room.
Do you remember telling the Santa Barbara sheriffs that Michael Jackson first touched you inappropriately during your last days at Neverland?
Yes.
Were you telling the truth?
Yes.
This was shortly before Vinny drove your family to your grandparents', right?
Not, well, it was like a week or probably 2 weeks before Vinny drove us back.
Well, you said to the sheriffs it was during the last days at Neverland, right?
Well, days equals 7 days equals a week, so it could be days. So, I mean, it was more like a week or 2.
We'll get to that. Did you discuss over the weekend with Prosecutor Sneddon exactly when you say this inappropriate touching took place?
No. Not over this, no.
Did you have any discussion at all with the prosecutors last night about when you say the inappropriate touching took place?
No.
Okay. Now, when you claim you were masturbated, were you wearing pajamas?
Yes, I was wearing Michael's pajamas.
Okay. Now, clearly during the last days at Neverland, you and your family, from what you say, wanted to leave, right?
Well, my mom always wanted to leave. I wanted to stay, because I was having lots of fun, but my mom was always really worried.
Well, at some point you say you escaped from Neverland, right?
Yes.
You've told the jury you escaped a couple of times before the final escape, which was when you left for good.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So what you were telling this jury is that after a couple of escapes, and following your return from those escapes, you claim you were inappropriately touched. That's what you're saying, right?
Object as argumentative, Your Honor.
Overruled. You may answer. Do you want the question read back?
Yes. Record read. Yes.
Now, you told the sheriffs that after Miami, you slept in Michael Jackson's room every night, right?
I slept in his room every night that Michael was there.
And this would include visits when your mother was staying at Neverland, correct?
Yes.
Are you telling the jury that you never discussed your staying in Michael's room with your mother?
Not really, because my mom was always in her unit. She was never outside or with us really. I mean, so we would just go into Michael's room.
Are you telling the jury that your mother never asked you, during any of those visits, where are you spending the night?
Not really, because I think she thought we were sleeping in our unit. I mean, because she was always in her unit.
Are you telling the jury your mother never left her unit at any time after the Miami trip?
She probably left a few times, but, I mean, mainly she was always in her unit.
And how many nights do you think you spent in Michael Jackson's room after the Miami trip?
I'm not sure because, I mean, every time that Michael was there, me and my brother would be in his room.
And you never had one discussion with your mom at any time after Miami about where you were staying at night?
I might have. I don't think I did. I'm pretty sure that I didn't, because she was never really involved in what we were doing at Neverland.
And you've told the jury that you and your brother were drinking every single night, right?
Every night that Michael was there.
You were drinking alcohol every single night that Michael was there. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. How about the nights that Michael wasn't there?
We wouldn't drink. I mean.
Well, you and your brother were caught by employees at Neverland drinking when Michael wasn't there, weren't you?
No.
Never happened.
No.
No one ever walked in the wine cellar at Neverland and caught you and your brother drinking when Michael wasn't there.
No.
Did you know where the key was to the wine cellar?
No.
To your knowledge, did your brother know where the key was to the wine cellar?
I don't think he ever knew. He was always with me everywhere we went.
Did you ever learn where the key was to the wine cellar?
No.
To this day, you don't know.
To this day, I don't know.
Never discussed it with your brother?
No.
Okay, now, correct me if I'm wrong. You've told the jury. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. You've told the sheriffs that Michael Jackson would give you and your brother Bacardi, right?
That was one of the things he gave us, yes.
That was rum, right?
Yes.
And you also said he'd give you Sky vodka, right?
Yes.
Jim Beam, which was bourbon, right?
I don't know what it is, but, yes.
And red and white wine, right?
Yes.
Did you drink all this stuff at once?
No, it was over the whole period of time that we were over there.
Okay, but never once did you taste any of this stuff when Michael wasn't there?
No.
Okay, never took any alcohol out of the refrigerator in the kitchen, right?
No.
Never got caught taking alcohol out of the refrigerator in the kitchen, right?
I never took any alcohol out of the refrigerator in the kitchen.
To your knowledge, was your brother ever caught taking alcohol out of the refrigerator in the kitchen?
I was always with him during the day, so no, he didn't.
Okay, now, you told the sheriffs at some point your mother was scared and wanted to leave Neverland, right?
My mom was scared, like, the whole time.
Did you discuss your mother being scared with your mother at Neverland?
Yes.
Did you have talks with her about it?
Yes.
And at no time during any of those discussions did where you and Star were sleeping at night come up.
Object as asked and answered, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You talked about a black suitcase. Do you remember that?
Yes.
When did you first see the black suitcase?
The same night that we came back from Miami.
And this is right after the Miami trip.
Yes.
The first night you're back.
Yes.
And when did you first see it?
In Michael's, bathroom room, and, he had all this stuff. He had, a sink and a bathtub and a mirror and stuff.
Before I explore that subject, you've talked to the jury about Michael Jackson giving you a watch that you claim he said was worth $75,000, right?
Yes.
And that's the watch you claim that others wanted to get back from you, right?
Oh, yes. I think Frank wanted me to give it back or something like that.
So after the Miami trip, you had the watch, right?
Yes.
You claimed that Mr. Jackson told you it was worth $75,000, right?
Yes.
Were you wearing it?
Yes. I believe so, yes.
And did Frank or someone else notice the watch, to your knowledge?
Yeah, yes.
Did you discuss the watch with Frank?
Not really I think Frank wanted me to give it back. And then I told Michael, and Michael was like, no, that's your watch. I gave it to you.
And did you have a discussion with Frank about whether you should return it?
Frank, I think, wanted me to return it, and Michael told me not to.
At some point, did you ever complain to anyone that that watch was not worth $75,000?
No, I always thought it was worth $75,000.
Did you ever learn at some point it wasn't?
No.
To this day, is that what you think?
I'm pretty sure that's how much it's worth.
Okay. Do you recall the Make-A-Wish Foundation?
Yes.
Did you have experience with them?
Yes.
What is your experiences with Make-A-Wish Foundation?
They called me up because I have cancer. They do it for every child that has cancer. And then they call you up and say that, you have one wish, and they tell you that, pretend I'm the genie, and you have one wish that you can have. And then I asked them, I wanted a dog, like a little puppy, a beagle, but Dad. My parents said that I can't have a beagle because it can get me sick. So I ended up just asking for a vacation.
And did you obtain any benefits from that foundation? Do you know?
Just a vacation.
They paid for a vacation.
Yes.
And approximately when was that?
Well, the doctor said to not go, because I had, it was such a big amount of chemotherapy, that it would wipe out every single one of the blood cells that I had. So it would be bad if I get a fever, because I was getting lots of fevers, because my white blood cells can't fight it because they're so little. And I would have to go in the hospital, and then they'd have to give me antibiotics. And if I was over in Hawaii, and I got a fever because of some bacteria or something that was in me, I wouldn't be able to go back, and then I would get really sick.
Did Michael Jackson ever help you make contact with that foundation?
No, I don't believe so. I believe the hospital social worker did.
Do you recall ever discussing with Mr. Jackson the Make-A-Wish Foundation?
I think I asked him if he donated money to the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Do you recall what he said?
He said that he did.
Okay. Do you know when you discussed that with him?
I think it was when he was doing the rebuttal thing, when he was getting ready to do the rebuttal. He was writing down all the foundations that he ever donated to.
And did you have a discussion with him about that?
Not really. I saw him, we were talking about it, or whatever, and then we were like, okay, and then we left and we were playing some more.
Okay. Now, you mentioned on your first day of testimony that when you showed up for the Bashir filming, there was some discussion about a burn victim.
Yes.
Tell the jury what that was about.
Well, there was a boy there that had gotten burned really bad, and then Michael said that he helped him or something. And then that he was going to film him, too. So.
Were you supposed to be in the same film?
Yeah, yes.
And did you have a discussion with Michael about that subject?
About me being in there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever meet this person who was burned?
Yeah, I think Michael introduced me to him.
And when was this?
Around the same time as the Martin Bashir thing.
Was it at Neverland?
Yes.
Did you talk to this person?
Yes.
Do you remember the person's name?
I think his name might have been David.
Was it Rothenberg?
I don't know.
Was this a young man that you learned's father had poured gasoline on him and set him on fire?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think that's what happened.
And he was supposed to be in the film with you, right?
Yes.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, you discussed with Michael the fact that Michael had helped this young boy, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you talk to this young boy about what he had experienced?
No.
Okay. Did you ever see him?
Yes.
And please describe for the jury what he looked like.
He looked like he was really badly burned and he was like a rocker. He was wearing, rocker stuff. And he was burned. And he had only a few hairs on his head because I guess it covered all the pores when he was burned.
Did you and he appear in the film, if you know?
Later I watched it, and then, I watched my part, and then I don't think he was in there.
Okay. But was he at Neverland the day you were filmed?
Yes.
Okay. Did you meet him shortly after you arrived?
Yes.
Okay. Did you and he walk around Neverland?
No, I don't think so.
How much time did you spend with him?
Michael introduced me to him and he was older than me, so I was pretty young. I don't know. We just didn't really have that much in common that much.
Okay. Were you ever personally threatened by anyone associated with Mr. Jackson?
No.
Okay.
Let's take our morning break.